boys and girls, welcome back to another Read Aloud. Today we're reading another book, but I want to tell you something. It's very important. On YouTube, there is a YouTube channel called Chocolate Huskies. I want you to subscribe to them and make sure to like their videos and keep their fun going on their YouTube channel. They have videos of dogs and just cute little dogs and tell you, so make sure to go subscribe to them. So this is The Tale of Peter Rabbit. We're reading a very small book today. The Tale of Peter Rabbit. Once upon a time, there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Floppy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in Sandbank underneath a root of a very fir tree. "Now, my dears," said old Miss Rabbit one morning, "you may go into the fields or down the lane. Don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Your father had an accident there. He was put in a pie by Mr. McGregor. Now, run along and don't get into mischief. I'm going out." Then, old Miss Rabbit took a basket and her umbrella and went through the wood to the baker's. She bought a loaf of brown bread and 5 croissant buns. Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, who were good little bunnies, went down the lane to gather blackberries. But Peter, who was very naughty, ran straight away to Mr. McGregor's garden and squeezed under the gate. First, he ate some lettuces, some French beans, and then he ate some radishes. Then, feeling rather sick, he went to look for some parsley. But round the end of a cucumber frame, whom should he meet but Mr. McGregor? Mr. McGregor was on his hands and knees planting out young cabbages, but he jumped up and ran after Peter, waving a rake and calling out, "Stop, thief!" Peter was mostly dreadful. Frightened, he rushed all over the garden, for he had forgotten the way back to the gate. He lost one of his shoes among the cabbages, and the other shoe amongst the potatoes. After losing them, he ran on 4 legs, and he went faster so that he could think he might have got all away altogether. If he had not gone it, unfortunately ran into a gooseberry net and caught by the large buttons of his jacket. It was a blue jacket with brass buttons, quite new. Peter gave himself up, for lost a shed big tears, but sobs were overhead by some friendly sparrows who flew to him in great excitement and implored him to expert himself. Mr. McGregor came up a Steve with enter and pop upon of Peter, but Peter wiggled out just in time, leaving his jacket behind him, and rushed into the tool shed and jumped into a can. It would have been a beautiful thing to hide in, but had so much water in it. Mr. McGregor was quite sure that Peter was somewhere in the tool shed, perhaps hidden underneath a flower pot. He began to turn over them carefully, looking under each. Presently, Peter squeezed. "Kershaw!" Mr. McGregor was after him in no time, and tried to put his foot upon Peter, who jumped out of a window, upsetting 3 plants. The window was too small for Mr. McGregor, but he was tired of running after Peter. He went back to work. Peter sat down to rest. He was out of breath and trembling with fright, and he had not the least idea which way to go. Also, he was very damp with sitting in that camp. After a time, he began to wander about, going limpy, not very fast, and looking around. He found a door in a wall, but it was locked, and there was no room for that fat little rabbit to squeeze underneath. An old mouse was running in and out over the stone door, carrying peas and beans to her family in the wood. Peter, but she had asked a large pea in her mouth that could not answer. She only shook her head at Peter. Peter began to cry. Then he tried to find his way straight across the garden, but he became more and more puzzled. Presently, he came to a pond where Mr. McGregor, filled with water cans, and a white cat was staring at some goldfish. She sat very, very still. But now and then the tip of her tail twitched as if it were alive. Peter thought it was best to go away without speaking to her. He had heard about cats from his cousin, little Benjamin Bunny. He went back towards the tool shed, but suddenly, quiet close to him, he heard a noise of a hoe. Scratch, 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 scratch. Peter stuttered underneath the bushes. But presently, as nothing happened, he came out and climbed upon a wheelbarrow and peeped over. The first thing he saw was Mr. McGregor hoeing onions. His back turned towards Peter, and beyond him was the gate. Peter got down very quietly under the wheelbarrow and started running as fast as he could along the sidewalk behind some black currant bushes. Mr. McGregor caught sight of him at the corner, but Peter did not care. He slipped underneath the gate and was safe at last in the wood outside the garden. Mr. McGregor hung up the little jacket, and the shoester frightened the blackbirds. Peter never stopped running or looked behind him till he got home to the big fir tree. He was so tired he flopped down upon the nice, soft sand of the floor of the rabbit hole. He shut his eyes. His mother was busy cooking and wondered, was he done with his clothes and the second little jacket and pair of shoes that Peter had lost in a fortnight? I am sorry to say that Peter was not very well during the evening. His mother put him to bed and gave him some tea, and she gave a dose of it to Peter. 1 tablespoonful of taken at bedtime, but Flopsy, Bopsy, and Cottontail had bread for milk and blackberries supper. The end. Hopefully you guys liked that little book, and we'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.